Erev Tov, everyone. Shenichnas Adar Hasheni Marbin B'Simcha. To add to your simcha, I will not sing it for you.
Try.
I've tried. The parsha begins, Ele Pkudei HaMishkan, Mishkan Ho'edut, Asher Pukad, V'yad Moshe V'Itamar HaKohen. So there's a redundancy of words in the pasuk that Rashi comments upon, and all the Meforshim. It already said, Ele Pkudei HaMishkan. Why does it repeat Mishkan Ho'edut? What other Mishkan is there? So there are all sorts of different pshatim here that have been said by many of the commentators throughout the ages. But the simple explanation that really perhaps is the most relevant to us, you build a Mishkan, the enormous investment of wealth, talent, time. It's a major, major undertaking. And then what happens with it? What is its purpose? How is it to be used? What is it supposed to represent? In other words, people walking by, what are they supposed to see in it? So the Torah said, the Pkudei HaMishkan, that's the building. And we're going to go through an accounting of all the material that went into the building. But the purpose will be what it says in the pasuk later, that the Moshe heard the Kol Hashem Mibein HaKruvim teaching Torah and expressing God's will to the Jewish people. So there has to be an accounting for that as well. There's a physical accounting for all of the wealth that went into the Mishkan, but there's a spiritual accounting for what the Mishkan actually represented. What did people feel about the Mishkan? When I came into the shul for Mincha, so there was a tour of, I don't know who or what, it was arranged here with the shul, tour of Israelis, fellow Jews that wanted to see the shul. I don't know what they want to see in the shul, since I wasn't here yet. But they wanted to see the shul. So what did they see in the shul? So it's a nice shul, Baruch Hashem. Nice building. There's beautiful stained glass over the Oren Kodesh, What did they see? So if they did not see Mishkan Ha'edut, they didn't see anything. Saw a building. But if it's the Mishkan Ha'edut, if it's the testimony to the eternity and longevity of the people of Israel, that it is only from buildings such as these is our future guaranteed. We need everything else. But the guarantee is from the Mishkan, from Mishkan Ha'edut, that testifies to that. So then if they didn't see that, so they didn't see the shul. They missed it. In the Haftorah, we will read about Shlomo HaMelech. So Shlomo HaMelech built a magnificent building. In his time, it was the most magnificent building in the world. They built it out of gold and out of silver and bronze, marble, the cedar woods of Lebanon. He had tens of thousands of laborers that worked on it. A magnificent structure. And he also made an accounting as to how the building was built, how the materials were used. And he named the main architect that helped. And then he says a remark, and he says a tefillah at the dedication of the Beit HaMikdash. So we usually, when we have a dedication of a building, so we acknowledge the people who built it, we acknowledge the donors, we acknowledge the mayor of the city. There's a whole formal program that constitutes the consecration of the building. Shlomo Melech said a remarkable pasuk there. V'yosim shom makom la'oram. And out of all of this, he said, I remembered to leave a place to put the ark. The Mefarshim explain that sometimes one is so caught up in building the building that he forgets what the purpose of the building is. And Shlomo HaMelech, in the review of everything that it took to build the building, to build the Beit HaMikdash, prided himself that I didn't forget why I built it. I made a place for it for the Aron Kodesh. As long as the Aron Kodesh will be there, and the Rabbanu Shalom, the Torah will emanate from that spot, so then Klal Yisrael not only will benefit, but will survive because of it. But without that, the buildings deteriorate, buildings are destroyed, buildings are blown up, Shlomo's building is not here anymore. And neither is the building of Hurdas. And neither are all sorts of other buildings. I mean, there are Jewish buildings that literally litter the landscape of the entire world. In the United States, I think there are hundreds of millions of dollars worth of Jewish buildings that are no longer Jewish buildings. The neighborhoods change, people move, demographics, of all sorts of things happen. And Chazal say that that's why the Aron was portable. Why? Lo yasura ba'alav lo yasura mimenu. The staves on the side of the Aron, which that was carried, they were never allowed to be removed, even when the Aron was seemingly stationary. And that was a reminder that the building may not last, but the Aron will last. You take it with you. And the Jewish people went into exile, they took a book with them. And that's what sustained them. And that's the Mokum Aron, the place for the Aron Kodesh, that he's so proud of what he did. So that's a lesson. So when we count the Elet Kudei HaMishkan, we count the physical materials and human labor and talent that went into building the Mishkan, it all has to have a purpose. The purpose is not the building itself, which is something that is so often overlooked, and that people miss the mark and think that that's it. I remember that I wrote it in one of my books. I have a new book coming out next week. We'll give the commercial now. And we're going to have a book launch here when it reaches the Holy Land. But in one of the books I wrote that when we were building a building in New York, in Muncie, and the contractor came to me and he said, he can get two types of beams. It was a wooden structure, and it had enormously tall, strong beams that supported the roof. So he said he can get two kinds. He said one is guaranteed for 60 years, and one is guaranteed for 120 years. And he said the cost is naturally different. So he said, which ones do you prefer? So I told him that in America, very rare is the Jewish building that lasts 120 years. So I'll take the cheaper one. Because the building is a building. And we don't know what the building is going to end up being. My father-in-law had a story in Detroit that it was a big conservative congregation, Shaare Tzedek, the major congregation at one time in Detroit. So they were in the old neighborhood, 12th Street. And the neighborhood naturally changed. So they sold it, and they sold it to a Black Baptist church. And they went on to the next neighborhood and built a magnificent building. After about 30 years, that neighborhood also now changed its demographics. And they sold that building to the same Black church that now is moving up. And after they did that, they bought a lot way out, and they're going to build the third building. And the pastor of the Black church came to them and he said, "Can we put somebody on the building committee?" So if the purpose is not Mishkan or Edus, so then it becomes a very temporary thing. And that remains so throughout all of Jewish history and throughout all of Jewish life. That the only permanence that's involved is Ein lanu shiur ela haTorah hazos. And so therefore, the Torah told us in the Parsha that that's how it be. Ele Pkudei HaMishkan, Mishkan Oedus. We're talking here on a double tier, on two levels. There's a level of the Mishkan, which I'm going to give you an accounting of. But the Pkudei Mishkan Oedus, you will have to give the accounting for. What will you see in the Mishkan? What will it mean to you? Will you arrange that there should be a place in it for the Aron Kodesh? And that remains the challenge until today. And not only here in terms of our synagogue, but in terms of our homes, and in terms of the Medina itself. Countries rise and fall. We're in the midst of seeing one country want to destroy another country. No guarantees. So then what remains? That's the measure of the Mishkan. That's the measure of Parshas Pkudei. And that can be accomplished only through Moshe and Itamar HaKohen, who represent not only the physical Pkudei, the spiritual one as well. And that's an important message for us to remember. Rabbi Chananya ben Akash Omer Ratzah HaKadosh Baruch Hu L'Zakon Tzitz Yisrael V'chil Chirva Lahem Torah Mitzvot Shenemar Adonai Chavei Tzaman Tzidko Yagdil Torah V'Yadir.